The story behind the popular Clark's Botanicals skincare line is one of resilience and survival. Entrepreneur Francesco Clark started the beauty line as a kitchen sink operation, but now it's used by stars like Madonna, Meryl Streep, and there's Julianne Moore. 6 years before he created the celebrated brand, Clark survived a devastating accident. It changed the course of his life forever.
30 seconds before, I was very proud and I felt accomplished. 30 seconds after, I felt like the biggest failure in the world.
At only 24 years old, Francesco Clark's life changed in an instant.
It was a beautiful day on Memorial Day weekend. I had a timeshare in Long Island, and there was a pool. And I dove into what I thought was the deep end, but the metal ring ladder that normally is in the deep end was in the shallow end. And the second that I dove in, my chin hit the bottom of the pool, and my head snapped back with such force that it shattered my C3, C4 vertebrae. So I was underwater with my arms out to the side, floating face down.
Unable to move.
Unable to move and alone. And somebody walked into the house, luckily, lifted my head above the water, and I said, "Call 911, you just saved my life."
His parents rushed to the hospital when they received the horrific news. So you wake up from surgery and your parents are there.
So the surgeon turned to my father and my mom, and he said he will never breathe on his own, he'll never speak, he'll never move his arms, and forget about his legs or the rest of his body. And while my dad is looking at him, my mom turns to me, and in Italian she says, "Sposta qualcosa," move something in English. And I looked at her and I was like, well, if my mom says I have to move something, I have to move something. So I twitched my shoulder, and she looked back at the surgeon and she said, "You don't know our son."
What is your dad's reaction to another doctor saying that about you?
When the surgeon said he will never move or breathe, he was defining my life as non-human, talking about me as if I was not there. And my father turns to him and said, I really hope you do not speak to other patients in this way. And the surgeon just looked at him, and my dad said, "I'm a medical doctor as well, and this is in no way the way that we were taught to speak to people."
Francesco's injury left him paralyzed from the neck down. With years of physical therapy, his progress would defy odds.
I always try to get as much as I can in.
But for years after the accident, he struggled with depression. Tell us about your recovery.
Every day adapting to what it means to have a new life, redefining yourself. So I could not look in a mirror or be in a room with a lot of windows, because all I would notice was the wheelchair.
You didn't want to see yourself in a chair?
I could not, because all I would notice was these four wheels that I sat on and not the person that was in it. And I would burst into tears every time that I saw it.
At what point did you say, I've got to do something, this has got to change?
The day that everything changed for me was hearing Barbara Walters announce on TV that Christopher Reeve passed away. He was the biggest advocate for people with spinal cord injuries. And so the day that he passed, I realized that my Superman had disappeared. And then I also realized that I had not done enough to take responsibility for what happened in my life.
So when you finally looked at yourself in the mirror, you thought, I gotta do what?
I did not look like myself. My skin looked like it was 10 years older than it was. It was very dry. Anything and everything that could go wrong with your skin went wrong with my skin, because it stopped sweating because of my injury.
With help from his father, a medical doctor also trained in homeopathy, Francesco would create his own skincare blend at home.
And when they started to notice that my skin started to look good, my sister said, well, if it looks good on Francesco, I'm just gonna steal a couple of these vials and just use them. And then my mom started to say, I'm gonna steal a couple of vials as well. So I created this triangle of kleptomaniacs of these products that we were making in the kitchen, but it was just something that I was doing for myself.
Humble beginnings for what would become skincare brand Clark's Botanicals. It's more than a company. It represents a renewed sense of purpose for Francesco.
So after Clark's Botanicals started, I emailed the CEO of the Christopher Reeve Foundation, and then I met with every director. I was just meeting with them because I wanted to do more and to be involved. And I felt like it was a very grassroots way of me giving back to something that gave me a reason for living. About 5 weeks, they called me and they asked me to become one of their national ambassadors.
Meant a lot to you?
It meant the world to me.
One of your mantras is vanity saved my life.
I like the juxtaposition of the phrase vanity saved my life because it catches you off guard.
Yeah.
And it makes you think that's such a stupid thing to say. Yeah. With beauty, there's a sense of vulnerability. It means a lot to me to connect to other people in that way.
I am so smitten with him, Norah. You know, we did something on him in the magazine. That's how I met him. And then I met him in person at the magazine and was listening to his story. I said, this is a good story. Can I tell this story? Yeah. But the thing about him is that he is so determined and so resilient. And I think outside of the fashion industry, you might not have heard of Clark's Botanicals, but a lot of people have heard of it. That's why my skin looks so radiant today, John, as you were commenting.
Yes, right.
And so the company is now a $10 million business. And he has already defied the odds. He does believe that he will work again. He will walk again, rather. He's already moving arms and legs that they said would never happen. And he believes that somewhere in the future that he will walk again. And I believe him too. Plus, you see, he's got personality. Plus, he's now 40 years old. Mm-hmm. He has love in his life. He has a supportive family. He's an amazing, amazing man.
It's a universal story, a lesson that can be learned from that. As many people feel their life is over.
Yes, yes.
And it's not.
And that's the story that he wants to tell.
And there's a story of resilience and following through, and have someone believe in you, like his mom, his parents, who told him.
Yeah. He said that his mom actually
his products.
said, he said it very calmly, but he said, and to use his product. His mom said, move something. Yeah. And when he said that, that was a trigger for him. How dare the doctor, though, say that?
I know, that
not knowing that his own dad was a medical doctor.
For his father for
really
speaking
great.
up.
He's a great guy.
Thank you, Gail.
That was
I literally was texting my friend, say, you got to see Gail.
I see a movie potentially
I do
for him.
too.